Welcome to the Sprint 29 report. The sprint ended on this Monday, September 14th. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about the sprint statistics. The providers will be done by Greg Blomquist, user interface by Dan Clarizio. Tenancy will be covered by Greg McCullough. The appliance and the core stuff will be done by Greg Tanzillo. The REST API by Alberto. SmartState and storage by Rich. And the Capablanca release by Jason and Matthew. Next slide, please. All right, so in this sprint, we had 234 pull requests merged. It seems like we're in a higher pace the last couple of sprints here, which is great. Of those, we had 60 pull requests were bugs, 71 were enhancements, 29 were tech debt, 27 refactoring, 34 were test, and I think 1 was performance, and 23 were gem changes. Next slide, please. We also broke it down by area, by feature category, and almost half was the UI at over 100. The next big one was providers with 59 and the sub breakout on the smaller chart on the right. And then you can also see that the other two big chunks there were the core and the tenancy, with kind of sprinklings from everywhere else. Next slide, please. Okay. On the gymnasium, on our Ruby gem dependencies, we're at 157 green and 50 yellows and 0 reds. So I think we're doing pretty well. If you look there, it's all production and development. And that's just the total count. So for production, we're even less than 50 yellows. I think we're down to like around 20 yellows or so for production. On the coveralls, which measures the code covered by unit tests, we're at about 53 or 54% coverage. Last night when I checked, it was flaky and it was reporting 31%. So we'll double check and make sure that it's less flaky going forward. Finally, the Hakiri service that we use to measure code security shows that 33 areas were verified and only 2 had any issues. So we had 3 cross-site scripting warnings, which were all classified as with a weak confidence level by the tool, and 5 denial of service warnings, which were classified as medium confidence level. Going forward, the idea is to try to get that down to 0 warnings. And the other thing that the Hakiri team is working on is to add their support to pull requests. So once that's enabled, then we'll probably have some feedback there on the call. Everybody can go on mute.
Everybody is on mute, so somebody's doing something technical. I can hear their microphones. Thank you.
Yep. Next slide, please. All right. So besides the ManageIQ repo, which is that big one in the middle that's given in alphabetical order, I called out the various other repos that are in the ManageIQ community that were updated in the last sprint timeframe. And as you can see there, we had contributions to around 10 other repos, plus minus. So 2 on Awesome Spawn, 9 on the Azure Armrest gem, 4 on the guides, 4 on the appliance, 19 on the appliance build, 1 doc change, 13 MIQ bot changes, 1 over change, and 2 polisher changes. So kind of the team is not just working out on the ManageIQ repo per se. It's touching a bunch of other repos that we own, and sometimes make contributions to external repositories as well. Next slide, please. All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Greg Blomquist.
All right, so the container management integration team, as you might have seen in some of the charts that Oleg was showing, really knocked the doors off this sprint. They had 43 pull requests merged. A bunch were bug fixes that are helping to solidify that container management integration. But there are 2 things I really want to call out specifically. First is this topology widget. Alyssa and the team have been working really hard on this, and after some technical hurdles with different UI packages, they put together something really amazing. For the first time in ManageIQ, you can see how things are actually connected together in the topology. And granted, this is currently targeted at the container management pieces, but it's a jumping off place to start pulling in the entire set of providers. And it's really exciting to me because it represents another step in that direction of presenting that holistic view of your infrastructure. And I know there's that nifty picture there, but I just found out that Alyssa recorded a quick video of this thing in action. And unfortunately, she couldn't make it to the demo today, so I'm going to go ahead and show that off. If I can steal the screen here. All right, everybody see that? Everybody see me sharing my screen?
We're seeing you. There you go. Now we can see.
All right. So let's kick this thing off. It's a silent videos, and I don't have a player piano here, so you just got to watch it silently. So I've added this new topology section in the UI. And it lays out this really cool graph that shows how everything's laid out. You know, as she's showing, you can pull things around. What's cool is you can deselect and reselect things that kind of give you a more targeted view of what you really want to see. And if you can imagine, as this starts building out larger and larger, you'll start to see more and more pieces pull into this. Like I said, I'm really excited about what this means in a larger scope, but also just this looks really cool.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'll switch back and go back to the slides. Thank you. And next slide. All right, so the other thing the container management team has been working on is they added support to show the relationships between Kubernetes nodes and VMware VMs. And again, this is another piece in that larger theme of that holistic view of the infrastructure. So last sprint, we saw that Federico added the ability to identify a Kubernetes node if it's running on a Rev VM. And this sprint, we get VMware VMs. And the more we keep linking this together, the clearer this bigger picture becomes. And next slide. So the OpenStack integration team, they were faced with some pretty tough obstacles this last sprint. One of the largest obstacles was that some of our OpenStack dev test environments bit the dust. But since Ladislav is not really one to be easily deterred, he took on the task of creating an environment builder that could both recreate our OpenStack dev test environments and also serve as the basis for our test suite validation. And to give a little bit of background on what that really means, most of our provider inventory tests rely on a testing library called VCR. And that allows us to record HTTP-based interactions and base our test cases on the responses in those HTTP calls. But when our dev test environments go down, it's really hard to create new VCR cassettes for testing new features. Now, with Ladislav's new environment builder, anyone should be able to rebuild the OpenStack environment, and the tests will all base their validation on that newly built environment. And I hope this kind of serves as a pattern for other providers' environments, and we can just kind of copy and apply it elsewhere. And so now I'm going to hand over to Brona, and she's going to talk about some new cool things in Azure. So next slide.
All right. Yeah, so we are pretty jazzed today to cut the ribbon, so to speak, on our new integration with Microsoft's cloud platform, Azure. So I am going to demo adding an Azure provider, and then Daniel Berger is going to give us an overview of the Azure Armrest gem that we developed and published. But before jumping into a demo, I thought it would be helpful to share some background on how we authenticate to and gather data from Azure. So ManageIQ integrates with the Azure Armrest API and leverages OAuth 2 to authenticate. OAuth 2 is an open authentication protocol that enables applications to access each other's data effectively. Next slide, please. So first of all, ManageIQ is registered with the Azure Active Directory on the Azure portal, and that is not to be confused with the on-premise Active Directory, where a tenant ID, a client ID, and a client key are generated for ManageIQ only. This information is then used to request a token from the Azure authorization server, and then this token is included in all subsequent REST API calls made to gather data from Azure. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Sure can.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna add a provider, a cloud provider. We'll enter in the basic information, the name of the provider, the type is Azure, and the tenant ID that I mentioned in my intro. We'll validate, check site, we'll add the provider. We'll give it a minute, we'll refresh. All right, so as of this sprint, we have support for availability zones, flavors, and instances. Incidentally, support for gathering an inventory of images is not yet in place in the Azure Armrest API. So we'll jump into availability zones, which incidentally are called availability sets in Azure, but they serve the same purpose as availability zones in other cloud platforms. Okay, so we have 2 availability zones, and we will pick one and take a look. So availability set 2 has 2 instances in it. Next, we'll take a look at flavors, which in Azure are referred to as either sizes or series. So here we have captured, I think, 41 flavors from Azure. We'll just pick one and take a look. We've captured the CPU, memory, and also the disk space in this particular flavor. And 3 instances were assigned the standard A0 flavor at the time of provisioning. So we'll take a look at those. And now we'll jump into instances. And we'll pick one. So we're capturing the high-level information such as the name, the IP addresses, the operating system, the power state, and also the CPU, memory, disk space. Used disk space does not seem to be available right now, so Microsoft's going to follow up on that. Okay, wrong back arrow, so we'll jump back into the same VM. We'll scroll down and you'll see that this instance belongs to availability set 1. And at the time of provisioning, it was assigned the flavor called standard A1. And that's it for me, for my demo. I'd like to hand the microphone over to Daniel Berger to provide an overview of the Azure Armrest gem.
Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so I just made this little QuickTime video. Bill and Brona and I have been working on this gem for several months now, and we've got it in a decent state. We're still working on it, but we'll show you what we've got so far. So I kind of cheated a bit here. And as you can see above there, I just did this in IRB. So everything I'm going to be doing here is in interactive Ruby shell. So you can use this gem on the command line. We are using it in ManageIQ internally as well, but the API is the same. And I apologize for the phone. Okay, sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and just start this. I set the tenant ID, client ID, and client key that Brona mentioned. And like she said, that's going to give us a bearer token that we're going to be passing along on all of our HTTP requests. So we're just going to create a configuration object here. And now you'll notice I did not set the subscription ID, but the API will automatically go and grab the first one it finds. So you can see that it was set there. So now that we have our configuration, we need to pass that along to our various classes. Here I'm creating a virtual machine service instance. And I'm just going to, with that, I'm listing all the VMs that I happen to have on my account. I'm going to focus on one in particular, which is this, it's a Windows 2008 server instance. And you'll notice the resource group there, which I'm also going to focus on. And you can see that the power status is running. That VM is currently running. And instead of listing them all, I can just focus on one. So let's just get information on that. So that just gave us information about that specific VM. I'm going to stop it now. And this is the Azure portal. And you'll see here in a minute that it is in fact stopping. And you can still get information about a VM, even though the power state is in transition, as it were. I meant to do an instance view here. I should have done. I was trying to find that so that it would show the power state. I'll do that. I'll do that in a second here for the next one. But you can see this information. There's two views that it gives you. It gives you something called a model view and an instance view when you get information about a VM. And in that particular example there, I got the model view. And they give you slightly different information. And now you can see that it was stopped, not just stopping. So let's start it up again. Those are asynchronous methods, so even though I called start, it doesn't block. So if I go back, so this time I got the instance view, and you'll be able to see the power state in transition right there. Now, right now, I should also point out we are returning big hashes. In the future, we hope to actually return Ruby objects. So it's a little nicer interface. But for now, we're dealing with hashes. And there are a bunch of other service classes. I'm not going to go through them all. I'll just show a couple here. We have them for availability sets and storage accounts and so on. This is resource groups. So resource groups are how Microsoft compartmentalizes resources. It's a security measure that they implemented. So you can see that was one of the resource groups that MIQ Azure Dan 1. Some of the resource group names look like storage accounts. I think those are the classic groups. Classic being the older version of Azure. Here, I think this is the last thing I'm going to show you quick is resource providers. So resource provider is, again, the way Microsoft compartmentalizes things that provide assets. So this is all of them. That's kind of that output's a bit ugly. Sorry about that. I'm going to give you a slightly nicer example here in a second. We'll just focus on, I was just trying to highlight a specific example, but I'm going to do Microsoft Compute here in a second. So there, Microsoft Compute is the provider, and those are all the resources it provides. So availability sets, virtual machines, and so on. And those API versions you see there, those are things that we have to attach to the end of requests to make sure we get the right, make the right call. And that is it. So I guess I need to unshare my screen here. And that's it for me. I guess I'm not sure who's next, but over to you.
Actually, I'd just like to add one thing, and that is that the Azure Armrest gem has been published to rubygems.org, so FYI.
Nice job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, over to Dan Clarizio on the UI.
All right, this is Dan, and following Dan Berger as I do in the stand-up call every day, so that's pretty nice. So I'm going to talk about the user interface, what we got done in this sprint. So you can see on the top there the number of PRs that we merged, which was quite a lot. Actually matches the chart that I always showed before. 25 bugs, about a quarter of them, about a quarter of them enhancements, and then we did a lot of refactoring and technical debt work. So that probably makes up most of the rest of it. Some of the major features that we added, what happened was with the Azure support, we are taking the editors, and as we have to put major features into them, we're trying to get them converted to Angular. Also started converting those to use RESTful routes. So Cloud Provider Editor is probably the first editor that's really fully done, kind of as far as all the technical debt that we wanted to get rid of. We also did some work in Tenancy in two different areas. In the RBAC and the roles, what we had to do was, in order to control the tenancy roles, because they live in the access controls area, we had to expose all the features inside of access roles. They're already there. We just had to expose them in the UI so that you can set them and create roles that can do tenancy and or other things inside that access roles area. Also added quota management to tenants, so you can adjust the quotas for each tenant. There was quite a bit of work done on the self-service UI. I've got some screenshots of that, and basically we're just chugging along on that, and it's still a work in progress, but the next couple sprints it should come to fruition. We'll probably have a demo for that in the next sprint or two. And then a major enhancement to the charting, which is something we wanted to put in for a long time, but a lot of people have been requesting it, so we've got it in now. And it's the ability to chart by field values. Now, if you're used to the product, we've done that before in the Cap and U charts, but that was never backported to reporting so that you could create any kind of chart you wanted based on the values of fields. It's always based on the count of objects in the reports. So I've got a demo of that as well. So next screen. It went pretty fast in Brona's demo, the cloud provider editor, but you can see here we've got it all angularized with the little red markers and stuff telling you when you need to enter stuff and not lighting up the buttons and things like that. So that's a quick screenshot of that. Next. Quota management. So as you can see, I mentioned the tenants are down there in the access control section inside of our configuration, along with users, groups, and roles. And there's a new button there called Manage Quotas, and you can actually authorize different roles by these buttons. So you can decide whether someone can manage quotas, but they can't delete tenants, for example. So you can do that. Next. So here's the actual quota management screen, all done in Angular, and basically allows you to turn on and off different quotas and set the limit values for all of them. These are all derived from the models. The models tell the UI which quotas to show on the screen. So it's very flexible and won't have to be updated as they add new quotas. Next. So self-service UI. Previously, we didn't even have a login screen before. So here's the login screen. It matches the classic UI login screen as well. So you log in and then next. We've got a minimal dashboard so far. I mean, we're just showing some things that we can get. So we can see the services and requests that are, that this user has, different information about them, which services are online, which pending requests you have, etc. Next. So these screens are pretty much have placeholders in them where we definitely have real data here. This is your real catalog of information, but we're having some troubles getting the images down, so that should be coming soon. Once that comes, these will be a lot fancier tiles, but basically you can see the catalog of items that you can order. Next. Once you've got your services in play, you'll be able to see a list of those. Again, placeholders for the images. That'll clean up, but you can see there on the top there's a filter list. You can search on any of the fields that are available. So if you hit next, we can see where it's filtered down by the I think Ceros. It was typed in. Hard to see on the screen for me. So you can basically filter through your service list, find the ones that you're interested in. Next. Service detail screen. So we show some information on top. The bottom information is still showing the JSON object that we retrieve, which basically tells you the answers that were entered for the dialogue to create this service. So in the classic UI, that's what you see down there, and that will come shortly. We're currently working on getting the dialogues to present in this new UI. Next. So same thing for requests. You have a list view, and you'll be able to sort and filter that as well. And next, if you click on a request, you get the details of the request. Same thing on the bottom. We'll show you the answers to the dialogue once you look at a specific request. All right, next. So with that, I want to turn this over to Martin Povalny to do the demo for the charting by field values. He's going to walk you through the whole report editor and everything.
Yeah, so while Martin gets set up there, I just wanted to say thank you to Booz Allen Hamilton, who's been engineering the vast majority of the self-service UI demo that you guys saw. They're a new partner in the community, and it's kind of good to see their contribution. So thanks, guys.
Team to work with also. Yep.
Yep.
I will share my screen. Let's run it.
We should increase the quality. Yeah.
Okay, so basically what we have done, we have worked on the charts in the reports. Previously, we were only able to show charts that have shown numbers of discrete values, such as number of Linux, number of images running Linux and stuff like that. We have implemented the possibility to also show discrete values from the reports that we have. So in this example, I'm showing that you can select the grouping that you will apply. We group by 2 different columns here, and we specify the aggregation function. Then in the charts, we select what aggregation function we want to chart. And here I'm showing that one of the grouping columns is shown as the series, and the other one is shown as the values in the chart. So this is the case where we have 2 columns that we use to group the data by. In the next example, so as you can see, we can use different type of charts, such as stacked bars or plain bars, and as everything works as expected as previously, so I can create a report and have it scheduled for running. Then I can display it and see the chart together with the report data. Here is a slightly simpler example where I have only one column that I use for grouping the values. Second value is empty, and again I here select chart mode values and select the aggregation function from the previous screen that I want to chart. And as you can see in the preview, I can load the created chart. So this is basically what was requested by the users. And there's a third mode that previously was not there because it did not make sense with the counts. It's the use case where you don't do any grouping and you simply take the values from the models directly into charts that I will show in the third example. Here you can see the aggregation functions in the report, and one of them is selected on top to be displayed in the chart. Again, everything works as previously, so you can put the reports into widgets or whatever, and export the reports. We have here. This is the third use case, basically where I have just selected name of the host and number of VMs. In this case, I would not be able to do any chart previously with the count charts, but now I can just select the numeric column that I want to chart. So this is something that has no equivalent with the count-based charts. Well, there's a lot of room for improvement, especially on the visual side, and we will be probably working on that in the following weeks and months. So the basic functionality for charts.
Which charting library are we using? Was one of the questions people were just asking.
Yeah. For now, we are using the JQplot charting library, but we have already done experiments with the C3 charts. We have a PR on the GitHub that just basically allows you to fill in the C3 charts, and a bunch of other work has to be done on top of that, and we have not yet decided when and if to do that. So for now, we are using JQplot in the project, and in the product in CFME, we are still using Flash-based charts. But these changes that we have done are compatible. So if you use the product version, then you will get the Flash charts with the correct values. Just we did not play that much with the styling. And some changes that we plan in the future will only be available in the JavaScript-based charts. Such as for the value-based charts, we need to format the axes because we have different units on the axes, such as megabytes, megahertz, whatever is available in the reporting part of the product of the project. and we had to re-implement these things in JavaScript. There's a PR on GitHub for that now, so that's where we are going to enhance the current capabilities. We will be able to use the same formatting for the values in the HTML tables and for the values in the charts. So that's what we plan. But for now, just JQ-plot in the project. Was there any more questions?
Nope. Thanks for the demo. Nice work.
I have not noticed. Okay. So that's all.
So we'll turn it over to Greg McCullough here, talk about tenancy.
Yep. So I briefly wanted to talk about a few of the enhancements we got in this sprint. Basically, tenancy, we've been getting more models associated with the tenants, as well as migrating and seeding the database to get any existing environments moved into a tenant model. So there's been work around that, as well as keeping Automate up to date with these relationships. Part of what I don't have in here is there was work around the specs, making them easier to work with tenants, as well as clean up in specs and other areas of the code for the continuing tenant work. So what we're getting into now is really the Automate side of capturing the tenant for things like requests and honoring those through Automate resolution and getting that stuff lined up. So that's the current work that's ongoing, and getting more models and stuff integrated into the tenant designs.
That's cool.
That's really good. Yeah, not too much.
Always good to see progress on the tenant side. An exciting new feature for the product. Very cool. All right, next slide, please. Over to Greg Tanzillo, I think.
There it is.
GT?
Yep. So there's on the core appliance team has worked on a number of different things during the sprint. These are some of the highlights here. So we've made nightly builds available on releases.manageiq.org. So Monday through Friday nights, we will do a build, and those will be available. You can pull the builds down from there, from that site. You'll also be able to get the latest nightly from the regular spot, manageiq.org, download develop, as well as the latest stable is also available. On the self-service side, backing up the stuff that Dan showed when he presented, a number of REST APIs have been added. Alberto will go into more details about those in a little bit, but we added some high-level things. Among other APIs that were added was service templates, service dialogues, and provision dialogues. And a lot of work's been going into tenancy as well. We've been working on the back-end support for setting the tenant quotas, stuff that Dan also showed under tenancy, and working on the back-end for supporting RBAC role setting for tenant admins and other user types. Currently for Sprint 30, we're also working on scoping of tenants within the application. That's a pretty big effort that's underway now, so I'll be able to show you stuff with that in the next Sprint demo. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alberto, and you can go into some of the web service REST API stuff that's been added for the Sprint.
Thanks, Greg. So for the REST API, the enhancements that came in this sprint, the first one was querying the service templates, but providing the ability to get the image, the href of an image of a service template. So you can query that with the virtual attribute, the picture.image.href. You can query the picture separately as a separate collections, as well as getting the image href for that. So with the image href, the way you hit the API, the full HTTP access, so you'll have a full access to the image itself. So that'll be easier to consume from the self-service UI. Other enhancements, the ability to query resource actions as a sub-collection of service templates, that's made available, and given that if you're just interested in, for example, here, the provision one, you can query that in particular. Okay, so next was exposing the service dialogues. So we've made that available as a primary collection, but you can also access the service dialogues for a particular service templates and or service as a sub-collection of that. Next slide, please. Okay, same with the service dialogues. We're also exposing the provisioning dialogues just for completeness here. Also, Tim added a new action to the reports collection, and we now have the ability to import reports via the API, which is really cool. Just a high-level snippet here. And yep, and that's it for the REST API. Next slide, please. Okay, so for external authentication, we've verified and tested two-factor authentication in the sprint with FreeIPA. So again, FreeIPA 4.1.0 or later supports that, and we verified it. Essentially, you would enable external auth with the Appliance console and configure the two-factor auth using the FreeIPA web admin. You can select either time-based or counter-based OTPs, sync up with an app like FreeOTP on your phone to get that configured. Then with the admin UI login, you'd simply enter your password plus the OTP from the app there, and the same goes with the REST API. So if you think of the self-service UI, you can log in there. In the back end, they'll be doing the REST API call, so they would enter the OTP in the UI, but then they get the token that they can use for the rest of the session. So that's available now. You can have there's a write-up on that URL as far as setting it up, configuring it, and that fun stuff. And that's it. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Alberto. Over to Rich.
Okay. Last sprint report, I mentioned the number of bug fixes that had yet to be merged before the sprint ended, and I just wanted to call out those fixes have been merged and are available in this sprint. We have VDDK support for version 6 and a number of fixes for Rev SmartState analysis, as I mentioned last time. Next slide, please. Okay, on top of the SmartState analysis refactoring that I mentioned last time, there's some additional refactoring was done. Most of it was to break our dependence on things that we perform SmartState analysis on as being subclasses of VM or template. This work was kind of prompted by container fleecing, where containers are not kinds of VMs. So in order for them to utilize common code in the fleecing path, we had to eliminate that dependency. But that's a good thing. So going forward, we'll be able to perform analysis on more types of things that are, here again, not VMs or templates. And that's it. Next slide.
Okay. Turning it over to Jason and Matthew to talk about the Capablanca release.
Okay. So yesterday we built the alpha build of Capablanca off of master. Smoke testing went well. We should be releasing the alpha very soon. The purpose of the alpha release is to start preparing for the final Capablanca release. So right now it's just a cut of the current master. So everybody out there, please download the alpha, start playing around, testing, finding bugs. We'd like to fix as much as we can before the beta release. The beta build will be at the end of the next sprint, so in 3 weeks. right now, it's like I said, since alpha is just a cut and master, more features will still come in between the alpha and beta, but it should start dwindling down and move us closer to the final release. An RC build will happen the sprint after that, so that's another 3 weeks. Between the beta and the RC, we should mostly be focusing on fixing bugs found in the alpha and beta testing phases. At that point, we'll also start being more selective about which fixes go back into the release candidate. Between beta and RC, we'll make sure that we only pull back really fixes. Featured work might be limited, but should probably stop. And then the RC should really be the final release. We'll give it another 2 weeks before we finally release it, so the community can keep testing and look for any really extremely breaking changes. Ideally, there shouldn't be any at that point. We should have found them a lot sooner. So that probably will be the final release. So like I said, 2 weeks after the RC will be the Capablanca release. And that's it.
And with that, I think that ends the sprint demo report. Are there any questions or comments? I see positive feedback there from John Hardy. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, if not, then thanks everyone for all the hard work. For the whole thank you to the whole community, and I thought it was a very good and solid sprint. We made great progress on multiple fronts, and looking forward to the next sprint in 3 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.